Because this is Algebra 1. It's a different subject. Yes, I'm waiting for people to come on. I may just be teaching to myself, but that's okay. Alright, there's nobody on here, but I'm just going to go because maybe some of you will watch it later. This is for Algebra 1, all of Algebra 1. Advanced Algebra 1, Standard Algebra 1, because this is a topic that's important. And I'm having to skip a few chapters with my Standard Algebra 1, but it's okay because this is something that won't require any prerequisite material, really. So, here I go. What we're going to be doing is simplifying radicals. Today is, after I looked it up because I couldn't remember, today's March 23rd. And we're going to simplify radicals. And you need to know that a radical is just a problem that has a square root symbol, and they're not always square roots. Sometimes you have a little number in the corner right here, like a 3 or a 4 or a 5, and that gives you different roots to look for. But if there's no number there, like the ones we're going to work with, they're always square roots. And I hope that you've had experience with square roots before. For example, the square root of 4 is 2. The reason the answer is 2 is because when you go opposite, 2 squared is equal to 4. The square root of 25 is 5. That's the answer. The reason is because when you square 5, you get 25. So you can see squaring a number is the exact opposite of taking the square root. Now, before we learn how to simplify square roots, you need to know a lot of perfect squares from memory. You need to really know more than this, but this will get you started. So what I did is I wrote down perfect squares that you're going to need to know from memory, and trust me, it will help you with this lesson if you know these. So like I have the numbers written down that are the perfect squares, like 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49. Those are the perfect squares. 64, 81, 100, 121, 144, 169, 196. Those are the perfect squares. And so then I put the square root of each one of those to let you see what the answers are. So the square root of 4 is 2. The square root of 9 is 3. The square root of 16 is 4, and so on. But you need to make sure that you write these down, learn them from memory. If you don't already know them, you should already know them. And that's all. That'll get you started. Like I said, there's others that you need to know, but that'll get you started. Now, what if you were told to find the square root of 27? And 27, that's not a perfect square. As you can see, we go from 25 to 36. 27's in there, and it's not a perfect square. Most of the time, higher math classes and standardized tests will want you to put your answers in simplest radical form. That means simplifying your square roots, not getting a decimal answer. Everybody could put in the square root of 27 on their calculator and get a decimal answer. That's not what we want. We want to simplify it and leave it in its simplest radical form. It's kind of like, it's not really the correct term, but it's kind of like reducing it. What you do is you take 27 and you pull out any factors of 27 that are perfect squares. And I'm going to show you how that works with this one. So if you were told to write the square root of 27 in the simplest radical form, think of the factors of 27. You've got 1, 3, 9, and 27. Those are all the factors of 27. But all we care about the factor, the largest factor that is a perfect square, that's one of these numbers up here. That's why you need to know these. And out of these factors of 27, the largest factor that is a perfect square is 9. So what we're going to do is take the square root of 27 and underneath the radical factor it. That means show two numbers that multiply to give you 27. We're going to factor it as 9 times the other factor that makes 27, which is 3. So once you've done that, then you just take the square root of 9. You think of this as like a square root of 9 times the square root of 3. And so the square root of 9, if you look back up here, is 3. So that 3 comes on the outside, and I'm going to mark the 9 out because the square root of 9 is 3, so it comes on the outside of the radical symbol, and you leave your other 3 on the inside. The way you read this answer is 3 on the square root of 3. It means 3 times the square root of 3. Sometimes people say 3 square roots of 3. But that is your answer. And so now I'm going to do several examples with this. And after I do several examples, and so you'll get the hang of it, I'm going to give you an IXL to do. And here are our examples. Oh, I have someone watching. Maybe that's me. I think it's just me. Okay. Let me make sure I got that in range. All right. So here, example 1. We have simplify the square root of 8. And I'm going to give you just a second to write that down. Hi, Mason's mom. Or maybe it's Mason. I've been going through this lesson on what we're doing. And oh, there is Dylan Horsley. Shout out to Dylan. Where's your brother? Anyway, the first part of this video, I introduced what we're going to be doing. There's some important stuff that you're going to need to know. So when we're through going over these examples, just look at the first part of the video so you can kind of see some important things that you need to know. Because I went ahead, even though I had no one following, I went ahead and acted like I did, so I can just save that video later for people to go back and look at. But anyway, you joined in time to start the example 1. So we're going to be simplifying the square root of 8. When you simplify the square root of 8, remember what you're doing is looking for the factors of 8, the largest factor of 8 that's a perfect square. And now definition of perfect square and some of the perfect squares we talked about is at the first part of this video. So think of the factors of 8. We've got 1, 2, 4, and 8. And what you're looking for is the factor that is a perfect square, which is 4. And so we're going to take 8 and we're going to factor it as 4 times the number that it takes to make 8, which is 2. So 8 is 4 times 2. Then you can take the square root of 4, and the square root of 4 needs to come, that answer for the square root of 4 needs to come on the outside. So when you take the square root of 4, the answer is 2, and that comes on the outside, and you've still got this 2 left on the inside. So your answer is 2 on the square root of 2, which is the same thing as 2 times the square root of 2, but that's your answer. Again, if you just joined, the perfect squares are on the first part of this video that will help you understand some of this better. But just keep watching the examples because I think you'll catch on. Hey Hayden, I did Algebra 2 earlier, so the video should be up for you for your Algebra 2 lesson. Okay, example 2, we're going to simplify the square root of 24. So when you simplify the square root of 24, remember what we're trying to do is pull the perfect squares out of 24. The factors of 24 that are perfect squares, we want to pull them out. So think of all the factors of 24. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, 12, and 24. Those are the factors of 24. But what you're looking for, you don't care about any of those factors except the one that's the perfect square. The perfect square is 4 because 2 times 2 is 4. See, there's not anything times itself that's 6. There's not anything times itself that's 8. There's not anything times itself that's 12. But 2 times 2 is 4. That's the perfect square. So we're going to take 24 and we're going to factor it as 4 times what it takes to get 24, which is 6. 4 times 6 is 24. Now take the square root. The square root of 4 comes out. I'm going to mark that out. It comes on the outside. The answer to the square root of 4 comes on the outside as 2. And then you're just left with your square root of 6. So it's 2 on the square root of 6, which means 2 times the square root of 6. I'm going to pause for just a second. And I'm not sure if anyone's still here watching from Algebra 1. If you are, you can ask me a question. I'm just going to go on if not. Okay, so we've got the square root of 75. So remember, when you're taking the square root of 75, 75 is not a perfect square. So we want to pull out any factors of 75 that are perfect squares. So you've got to ask yourself, what are the factors of 75? The factors of 75, and you don't have to do this every time. I'm just doing it to kind of help you. 1, 3, you're going to have to help me. 5, 15. I'm going to be embarrassed if I mess up on video. 25 and 75. And so then you ask yourself, which one of these factors of 75 is a perfect square? I only see one that's a perfect square, 25, because 5 times 5 is 25. I may need to move that over some. All right, so you're going to factor 75 as the square root of 25 times 3. Because 25 is a perfect square and 25 times 3 is 75. So now you want to take the square root of 25. So like forget about the 3. What's the square root of 25? It's 5. Because 5 times 5 is 25. So that 5 comes on the outside. I'm going to mark out the 25. And you're left with 3 on the inside of your square root. So it's 5 on the square root of 3. Are y'all catching on? Dylan, is that making sense? All right, example 4. We only have 2 more after this. Good, Dylan. Example 4. We're going to simplify the square root of 72. So to simplify the square root of 72, we have to pull out any perfect squares that divide into 72. So you need to think of some of the factors of 72. 1, 2 goes into 72. 3 goes into 72. 4 goes into 72. This is a hard one. 6 goes into 72. 7 doesn't. 8 goes into 72. 9 goes into 72. 12 goes into 72. 18 goes into 72. I ran out of room. 36 goes... I think I skipped one. 36 goes into 72. 24 goes into, that's the one I skipped. 24 goes into 72. And of course 72. So these are all the factors of 72. And so you're looking for the largest perfect square. I see several perfect squares. 4 is a perfect square. 9 is a perfect square because 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. There's a higher one though, 36, because 6 times 6 is 72. So that's the one you want to go with. You want to go with 36. So we're going to factor 72 as 36 times, the other factor is 2, because 36 times 2 is 72. Now take the square root of 36. The square root of 36 is 6, so it comes on the outside, and you're left with your 2 on the inside. So 6 on the square root of 2 is the simplified form. All right, moving on. We have 2 more examples. Example 5. Now look at example 5. Look and see what makes it different than the others that we've done. This one has a number out front already. So this is 3 on the square root of 200. That means whatever we get for our answer for the square root of 200, we have to multiply that outside number by the 3 that's already on the outside. That's the only difference. So when we're working this, let's forget about the 3 for just a minute. And let's just concentrate on finding the square root of 200. So I'm going to, instead of listing all the factors of 200, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you that the largest perfect square that will divide into 200 is 100. Because we know 10 times 10 is 100. So I'm going to go ahead and factor. We'll pull out my largest factor of 200 that's a perfect square, which is 100. And I'm going to factor then 100 times 2. Now remember, we've still got a 3 that's really on the outside. I'm just not writing it down yet. Now you take the square root of 100. So I'm going to mark 100 out. Take the square root of 100, which is 10. And then you're left with your 2 on the inside. So you get 10 on the square root of 2. But wait a minute. What about the 3 that's right here on the outside? You have to include that. So that 3 comes down and it just multiplies by the 10. So 3 times 10 is 30. And so your final answer is 30 on the square root of 2. I hope that makes sense. I see some Algebra 2 people on here. Welcome. This is Algebra 1. You're welcome to watch. But I did an Algebra 2 video this morning. It should be on the group page if you want to see what our new lesson is for today. And here's our final example for Algebra 1 for today. We have another one that's just like the one I did, 8 on the square root of 27. So let's see if you can follow this one. Remember, the 8 on the outside just means that we're going to multiply 8 by whatever number we bring out from this square root of 27. So let's concentrate on the square root of 27. You want to find the largest perfect square that's a factor of 27, which is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So that's going to be 9 times 3. Now remember, we have this 8 that's on the outside. I'll go ahead and write it down for right now. Then take the square root of the 9 and the square root of the 9. I'm going to mark it out because I'm bringing that answer for the square root of 9 out. It becomes 3 on the outside with your other 3 on the inside. And then we've just got to multiply the 8 by that 3. So our answer is 24 on the square root of 3. Now, I'm going to pause for just a second, and those of you that are watching, see if it makes sense to you. You can just say yes or no. Good. Okay. So now what I'm going to do on the next page is just show you the IXL topic that goes with this to let you practice it. That will be your assignment. Remember, this is not mandatory, but it is really good for you to do, and it will give you extra points. I'm not sure yet how everything's going to count. I know you'll get credit for this. So I'm going to show you your IXL topic. Alright, there it is. So y'all write that down so you won't forget it. This is your first IXL lesson on what we just did, simplifying radicals. It's Algebra 1, EE1. Try to get a SMART score of 90. If you want to be a really good student, get a SMART score of 100. I'm just kidding. All of y'all are really good students just for doing this. And I really appreciate it. And I miss y'all so much. Hopefully we can come back to school sometime. But work on this. Let me know if you have any questions. And I'll check back to see if there's any questions that you leave under here, and I'll try to answer them for you. I think all you need is practice with this, though, on IXL. And I'll do the same thing tomorrow at about the same time. Bye.